Thank you for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers, or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
Well, I remember writing, this must have been, 6 or so years ago. I don't know if you remember, Brent, but I remember writing out this just thought process that I had on reactivity and aggression one day.
Oh, yeah. I think I have it in an email somewhere.
Yeah. And it was interesting because I spent a lot of my childhood in Mexico, and in Mexico, there's just packs of dogs just kind of roaming around. And the funny thing is, I've never ever been attacked. Like they're not really reactive. They just don't care about you,
Yeah.
They just kind of see you and like, all right, whatever. They don't even so much as bark at you unless like their prayer drive kicks in because I'm flying by them like on my quad. Right. But I notice I'm like, it seems like reactivity seems to be a function of a dog in a home.
Yeah.
Whereas everybody looks at dogs on the streets and go like, oh, you poor baby. And I'm like, I think he's okay. I like on an instinctual level.
Yeah.
And so what I wrote out back, and I still kind of remember, was I was trying to think of the different circumstances. I think I used a homeless person as an example, and it was like, it's like you take a dog that just wants to. Dogs are unnatural as it is, like in a sense, right? They were kind of bred down strategically by us, going back 20-something thousand years.
Yeah.
And then we kind of doubled down on that by putting them in this extra unnatural situation, a house with like people in it, in a yard, and
city noises.
Right, city noises. And in essence, dog training is just trying to find the way to give the dog its like natural inclinations in an unnatural setting. So obedience versus behavior, what we're talking about, I do think that a bridge exists there. I do think that behaviors, or rather, I do think that obedience can teach behaviors just like a kid, right? There's nothing special about brushing your teeth every night. But if I can teach you to do that, I can teach you time management. I can teach you to remember. I can teach you routine. And that will make you a good kid, not brushing your teeth every night, right? So for dogs, it's a similar sort of thing, at least in my head. And owners, getting them to do that. Make sure your kid brushes their teeth every, that blending together, excuse me, like you were talking about, is, my opinion, gives dog real human to dog affection. Cuddles are great. I cuddle with my personal dogs all the time too, but they also need the other stuff. They also need clear, direct leadership that allows them to not feel like they have to take on the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's something that I try to make clear, not only to clients in my personal life, my trainer, we have new trainers coming in here hopefully pretty soon, but just to people listening. I always try to think, whenever we have these conversations, we're talking to people who, and I would encourage you should start your podcast, because we're talking to people right now who, like, I imagine people who I can imagine, like who I'm creative enough to imagine, like a trainer in, I don't know, Phoenix here somewhere, who hears this and goes, oh, that's kind of cool. But sometimes you'll get emails from someone like in Ecuador who's like, oh shit, that just changed my whole, So you never know what little piece of information you have that may be like really helpful to someone.
Yeah, totally. I will say there was a time that obedience changed behavior. So, because Moose used to be so reactive when he was in the car, like go, 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 go. And I kept doing all this like condition relaxation and stuff. And finally I was like, and I mainly do like low levels on the e-collar. So I think it was like a 6 from 0 to 100. And I was like, down. Your ass is not allowed to get up.
Downs in the car. That is my, yes.
And that's not actually my go-to. Like, I'm more like, I'll go in and out of the car. And when the dog relaxes on their own, I'll shut the door. When they like start moving, like I'm very much like, I'll do a certain thing until the dog finds it. I don't do a lot of obedience naturally in the stuff I do.
Okay.
And like, I don't do obedience for place. Like I do, so naturally I'm not always doing it, but I was like, down. You don't even get to look out the window. Down.
Yeah.
And man, I was like, duh, like I did it. And it was such a quick thing, because he's super sensitive. And I was in Colorado for like 3 weeks visiting my family over like Christmas. I was taken to like a really wash park. I was taking this really busy park where it's just like every trigger or distraction you could think of is there. So the first day I just started in the car and had him watch in the car. And he, like the first time, he just full on lost it, which in LA, he's cool in the car, but just being in a new place, this is how
he's stressed out.
Back to kindergarten. Yeah. And I was like down, and we did it for like 20 minutes and it was fine. And then the next time he got up, he had so much a softer look. And I was like, okay, you can look like that.
Leave him alone.
He started getting tense again, down. Like, like, how simple. Like I literally was like, why was I puzzled by this? Like simple, you know, but that's where it's like
well,
you got to get creative. What's going to work for this dog in this moment?
And there becomes this thing, and you talked about, there's one time, or like this particular story where the obedience helped the behavior. And on so many times, because most of my programs are obedience centric, and then and the go home session, we do the behavior stuff, right? Because people want the sits and the downs and the heels and the this and the recalls and all that other stuff. But when we actually sit down and set things up, well, we're putting boundaries at the door. We're putting boundaries on the couch. We're putting boundaries in the kitchen. We're putting all these things. And so many times I have the different experience where it's like when I teach people, okay, we're not even going to go over commands today because your dog knows it. You saw that in the demo. Right. For the next 2 weeks, we're just doing this. And they're all like, totally. But do I tell them to sit? I said, no, just press them out the door. Just press them back. Yeah. And they're like, is there a command I say for that? No, it's not a word. Just do it. Right. Yeah. And they're just like, huh, what? Like no commands. And so that's kind of where, the concepts like actions speak louder than words and all of that stuff falls into it. And it's just really beautiful because, there is this marriage between communication of the obedience and the rest of it, because so many times, how many times we get this complaint, like as obedience trainers, it's like the dog only listens when he's on leash. Right. Or the dog only listens when he's on remote collar. Well, it's because that behavior stuff hasn't been developed completely, So it's beautiful. I just love how there's this kind of symbiotic relationship between the two of them.
I noticed that owners tend to overhandle the dog maybe. So I actually find it kind of interesting.
They do too much. You're like, you're doing too much.
Or they want to do too much. Like they're like, it can't be that simple. And they mess it up, So it is fascinating. Like, because the down in the car, that is a helpful one. And I also agree with you. If the dog's calmer, it's a different story. It's just to get the dog to a point, right? Like, it sounds funny, but I like to think of hopscotch. It's like, in order to get to the next little hole, you need to do this one, because you can't just jump ahead. Yeah. And the other one, like, other than like downs in the car or like downs out in public or something like that at a restaurant, is the heel command. I consider the heel command like a living command, because it's continuous. It's different. Like, you can walk through a place and every second is different, right? But that too, if I'm working heels with a dog, and let's say, my personal dogs actually sound pretty similar to your dogs, including my foster dog sounds like your shepherd, Yeah. And if I see that she's nervous, I'll tighten up on my heel just so that she doesn't have the ability to give that thing the focus to make her nervous. So then she tunes back in, at which point I like ease it down. Like, I'm trying to like play the game with her of like, over here, good. And then I'm trying to bring it down. If I have to, I'll get firmer with it, but then when she kind of opens up and is calmer, I'm not really that strict about the heel. If you drift around here and there, I'm like, whatever, just be calm. If I see this, then I'm going to jump on it. But playing that game of knowing when to kind of teeter-totter in and out, and the way that I would consider it is like, I tell people my job or my ambition, my whatever you want to call it as a trainer is, we talk like in the eval and all that good stuff about like, well, rules and crate training and routine and schedules and obedience. And it sounds like a lot of I'm going to make your dog do X, Y, Z. And I try to explain to people, like, I need you to understand, I want my dogs to have all the freedoms in the world, all the love, all the this, all the that they can productively handle without making it into something bad. So if I need to walk that back just a little for now, I'm going to do it just a little for now. And when the dog gets better with this much freedom, I'm going to give them this much more, and then this much more, and then this. But people go the other way about it too.
Structure creates freedom.
Structure creates freedom. But because owners do the other thing, like, oh, I want my dog to have, especially rescued people. Oh, he has such a horrible life. Well, everybody has that dog that's like, I rescued him. I think he was abused. So I just don't tell him, like, I don't tell him, no, I don't do this, I don't do that. I think he's scared of his crate. I think he's blah, 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 scared of his.
I let him jump on people to build his confidence.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you have to understand, if you were to put a little structure on your dog, he could have more freedom. Imagine if this dog
would actually build his confidence to know what's expected of him.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
And never be like, I tell people, dogs hate this question. What do I do now? Dogs love this question. Dad,
what do I do with
you
my
tell
hands?
me, what do I do now? So it's fun when you give them something, you make their world bigger. It means making it smaller for a second for a lifetime of benefit.
Well, and it's not about like, I think clients will think it's like making dogs do things, but this is something big I took from Sherry Lucas and Brian Agnew, who I do enjoy, is there's 3 safe spots. There's 3 Zen zones, 3 safe spots next to me, in your crate, and on place. When you're anywhere else, I can't do anything for you, you know, like, but if you're packed in and next to me, nothing bad happens. If you're on place, nothing bad happens. And cause like, I really worked with Animal Help and Wellness for a while, which is for people who don't know, it's a meat trade rescue. So they're rescuing dogs from meat trade. That's a big reason why I stopped eating meat.
Is his name Mark? What's his name?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And so anyways, so I had this one dog that kept going, little, kind of looked like a Shiba Inu, but wasn't, was just like, not a dog bred here, you know, like such a
right.
And Isla, I love her so much. I really love the sensitive, scared dogs because it allows me to like soften my energy, and I can be like firm, but it doesn't, softening does not drain me, you know. I like love,
I see.
I love softening. Yeah. So anyway, but she was going after everything, going after people, going after ankles, and what she wanted was space. She was terrified. She was rescued from Yulin, and you know, all the and there is trauma, right? Like, we don't want to think about the dog's story so much, but there's trauma in her body, you know. And so I believe that like our human bodies hold on to trauma, and I think the same is for dogs. And so anyways, she was doing all this stuff to make space. So once I taught her place, when she would be in the yard, because she was going after dogs, but you could just tell it was like she'd go after it and then run back to her spot, like, please get the fuck away from me. So I taught her place, and the moment she would go on the place in my yard, I would stand in front of the place, and any dog that came over, I would send them away. Like over, if she was next to me, if she was next to me, I would send them away. And so quickly she learned, oh, the moment I go on place, it's like I have an invisibility cloak. And that was kind of her, you know, and this worked for her because she wanted to be invisible to the world, right? Some dogs want the affection, so you teach them, when you're calm on place, mom and dad will come give you affection. Her case was the opposite. She wanted to be invisible to the world. So anytime when she went home, she was on place, no guest was allowed to go up, and I mean, it's like she's Harry Potter with his invisible cloak on, like, ignore her. At the moment, so when she comes into my yard, because I'll still board her sometimes, she's in the yard and my other dogs come out, she goes right on a place and I send her away. So it's like, I don't know what made me think of this. I'm sorry. There was something you said that made me think of Isla.
No, well, you were talking about the importance of making sure that they feel safe in these different circumstances.
Oh yeah, like, so that's how I treat healed too. Is like, when you're next to me, because most dogs, if they have reactivity, they're not confident dogs. They're insecure. Like, so it's just, I teach them as like these 3 safe spots. And that's what's like comforting, instead of owners being like, oh, I'm making my dog sleep in the crate. No, this is their Zen zone to go relax. Like, your dog, you know, out of my 4 Blues, Blue doesn't have to be in a crate. He can do whatever he wants. He's Buddha of dogs. He's like the coolest energy. Popcorn, I still do it, but he could graduate, but I don't see the reason. Moose and Lily, if I did not leave them in their crates when I left, Moose would be like, okay, now I have to protect this whole house.
I got to check the front door, the side door. I got to check everything.
He would get super anxious. Instead of, I'm just like, you get to go chill in your Zen zone. I'll be back in a few hours. I'll see you later. You know, so it's teaching them to love all these spots so they feel safe. It's not making them do anything.